So first up, we're just going to say a surprising fact that we think England has a long tea culture. But in fact, it's only 400 years old. Maybe a little bit before that, but the main introduction of tea in the UK came from the marriage of King Charles II to a Portuguese queen, Queen Catarina. And through this marriage, the customs from Portugal came into the royal household, and one of them she brought with them, that was afternoon tea. Because Portugal in the 16th century was, kind of one of the world leaders in colonization. And with Spain, they were enjoying, not really enjoying, I say, for the people they colonized, but the fruits of occupying foreign land and taking all their resources. And for the royals, that means you get nice tea. And this kind of came to England. And the royals and the rich bureaucrats are like, this tea thing's really good. We can show we're higher up with this tea. And then, England and the United Kingdom grew its empire slowly. There was a focus on the tea. And in the 18th century, this kind of led to a very famous war, the Opium War. Before that, we'll just talk a little bit of background why this happened. So England really liked the tea from China. Like that was the tea what worked in the UK. Mostly because it worked with English water. So England would buy this tea from China and would pay in silver. But in the 18th century, England was also gone through the Industrial Revolution, and they got really good at making silk, making silk cloths, making produce. And the sort of loophole here was they would sell that to India for, silver. And they set up a lucrative trade between India and China, that China would buy Indian opium for silver. So it basically means the silver went to England to China, would then go from China to India, and then back to England. And at the same time, England would just gain tea. Right? But this has kind of had the problem with, the Chinese, who at the time was Xin, the Xin country, were kind of fed up of drugs and opium from India. It turned into pretty much a big drug cartel. Around 1840, they banned the sale of opium, the imports opium to China. And this led to the Opium War, because, UK can't have trade deficit to the tea. So mainly for the only reason for tea, UK invaded China, took over Taiwan, and colonized Hong Kong as well, and kind of scared the rest of the Asian countries a lot. Because it was the first real military might of a Western country comes into Asia, and just supposedly China at the time, especially for the other Asian countries like Japan, was seen as the big daddy, right? To China. And some foreign nation comes in and just wipes them out. Pushes them over. So it's quite a big shock. And then after that, England was like, we kind of got to stabilise this tea situation a little bit. So they moved more of their sales and production to India. But again, this tea fascination with the UK kind of led to more, hardships for the colonies, and in fact, civil war for America. So English tea history is more just, it's a bit like a cartel history, really. That's going to end up today's little bit about history of English tea, and next on to some differences, because there's a really interesting fact about English tea, what's different in Japanese. That's to do with the water. So that'll be the next part of this episode. So, as I'm learning Japanese, I've been learning Japanese for a long while, there's one difference between tea, so the English tea would get in Japan, and then to the UK. That is the kanji. So the kanji for tea, or English tea, what we call it, black tea, is kocha. The ko is crimson, so it's crimson tea. But if you're from the UK, you might realise, English tea is black tea. Why is it crimson red? And that's because, in Japan it is crimson red. But in the UK, the same tea is black. What? But it's the same tea, right? Yeah. But this is the interesting fact. The colour of the tea is dependent on the water you use. So Japanese water is very mineral rich. It's nice and clean, and it's very light. You call it karusi, light water. But UK water is full of like calcium, and kind of has to be treated before drunk. This makes it a bit harder, like hard water, karusi. And this difference actually affects the colour. So the same tea you would use in UK would be black, and in Japan it'd be more red colour when you look at the water. Well, it's quite interesting, really. It shows you that I don't know how much the taste difference. I meant to try it, but I think it's a good test to do. Test out, say, get some mineral water, test out with the tap water from the UK, and maybe you'll see there's a difference in taste and colour. So it's a good experiment for people to do if you're interested in that part of tea. And I'm not sure how this would affect the very famous Japanese tea, matcha. But before we end, I'll just give you a little tip to make good matcha tea. So recently I've been doing lots of matcha every day. I've been making 1 cup every day, and it's kind of hard because you've got to whisk it, right? And when you first stop doing the whisk, you take a long time to get the bubbles, and it's like, oh, it's super hard. You got to go really, really fast, so you're like hurting on the arms. But there's actually a little trick. And this would help any coffee owner, any person in a coffee shop who wants to make good matcha. I've seen some shops in the UK try and do it, but they get it a little bit wrong, so it's like, it's hard. But if they do this little tip, it'll make it good every time. And that is, before you put hot water over the matcha to stir it, put some cold water, a little bit, and then stir it first. This way, you've got like a matcha paste, what then when you put the hot water on, which is around 80 degrees, so that's all the hot water you want, not boiling. And this will make it super easy to fluff up, get the foams, and make it good matcha. So that's a little tip for the end of today's episode. And if you like JinJapan Podcast and the content I make, please subscribe, especially if you listen to this podcast on iTunes. Because, well, most people who listen to podcasts are on iTunes. And if you leave a comment there, that'd be much appreciated. And if we meet one time, I will make you matcha if you do that. いいね。そう、皆さん最後まで聞いてくれて本当にありがとうございました。じゃあね。